Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door. It's funny because I had recently just played Paper Mario Sticker Star, and so I just played what is considered the worst Paper Mario game, and now I have just played what is considered one of the best Paper Mario games. The version I played this time was a remaster of the original GameCube version. I own both of these copies now, and I've played the GameCube version several times at this point. I don't have like an exact list of all the things that have been changed from the GameCube to the Nintendo Switch, but some of the things that I have noticed playing through this is obviously the visuals are a lot better. It looks like now how I imagined it looked like back when I played it on the GameCube. The surfaces are so smooth and shiny and reflective, like even the ground you can see a little bit of like Mario, all the different characters' reflections in the ground. The water actually looks pretty good too, and I know it's weird to say like because everything is made out of like these flat shapes, and so it's weird to say like, oh, this game looks so good, but Paper Mario can look actually really good, despite all the polygonal two-dimensional shapes. The main story revolves around a town called Rogueport, and Rogueport is full of dirty dogs and thieves and scoundrels. So thematically, it's very different than Mario's typical central hub areas because it's very dirty. There's like trash everywhere. There's a bunch of guys smirking and thugs all around. And it's actually a pretty fun area to explore because as you are playing through this game, you will eventually acquire these different means of traversal. And then it's like every time you return back to Rogueport, there's a ton of like different nooks and crannies that you are now able to explore and get better items. And that's nothing to say about the vast underbelly of Rogueport because as legend has foretold, there used to be an ancient civilization which met its ruin, and eventually the town of Rogueport was built on top of that ancient civilization. And so you can actually go down these warp pipes in Rogueport, and then there's just like this huge underbelly with all these different areas to explore, and it just grows more and more expansive as you get these new traversal abilities. And I actually like how you unlock these traversal abilities. Basically, you'll come across like a giant black chest, and a guy will be talking to you from inside the chest, and he'll say, hey, let me out, go find a key, and please let me out. And you'll go find the key and unlock the chest, and then it turns out that it's a curse. But it's not really a curse, really it is a blessing, because this guy will like curse you, quote unquote, with the new ability to traverse. So for instance, the first traversal ability that you will get cursed with is the ability to turn into a paper airplane, and this will allow you to soar across certain areas. But the whole time the guy's like treating it like he severely cursed you and oh, woe is you, but you know, internally you're like, oh, this is pretty cool, I can turn into a paper airplane now, nice. And you'll encounter more and more of these black chests, and it kind of becomes like a running joke throughout the game. I mean, Mario doesn't speak, but at the same time he does, but like we don't actually hear him speak. It's kind of weird that way, but the chest will be like, what's that you say? You say you've encountered another chest and it cursed you? Oh, who would do that? I promise I won't do that this time. And it becomes like more and more obvious that yes, these chests will indeed curse you. But it's just exciting, like every time you explore a new area and return back to Rogueport and the underbelly, you also in your head you're like, oh cool, now that I have, you know, that upgraded hammer, or now that I have this new traversal ability, there's actually an area that I came across before that I wasn't able to do before, but now I can destroy it or surpass that obstacle and explore what is behind it. It's very like Metroidvania-esque in that aspect. But yeah, through Rogueport, you do get to all these other areas because the idea is underneath Rogueport, you have encountered this huge, massive door called the Thousand Year Door. And the only way to open the Thousand Year Door is to find all 7 of the crystal stars that are hidden throughout the land. It's foretold that there's an incredible treasure that's behind the door. Peach mailed Mario, this is kind of like Mario's call to adventure, but Peach mailed Mario a letter sending him a map. And the idea is that this map that Peach sent Mario will uncover the new locations of the crystal stars. Every time you return back to this Thousand Year Door with a crystal star, it'll show you the next location of the next next crystal star, and that's basically like the next area that you're going to explore. And I really have to commend this game in terms of its unique environments. I know I always complain about Mario games always having the same generic environments, and this game really kind of like subverts the expectations. Like, yeah, the first land that you go to is kind of like a grassy area, but then you go to a dragon's castle full of these undead dry bones, or dead bones, I think they're called. The second one is almost like this black and white toned forest, but then like the floor is all rainbow colorful, and you explore this like huge massive tree that's inhabited by these little creatures called punies. And so it's just unique. It's not something that you typically see in terms of environments for these games. Even the central hub being Rogueport, and then all these extra areas that you explore, each area stands out so much, and it has its own unique contained story within it that you solve as you are getting the crystal star, and they all have their like own different themes. For one crystal star, you're actually on like a train most of the time, and it kind of plays out like a murder mystery almost, where you're accompanied by this detective penguin. That's another thing that I really want to commend about this game after coming off of the coattails of Paper Mario Sticker Star, are the unique characters. It's not just Toads and Goombas. There's Toads and Goombas for sure, but each Toad has like its own aesthetic, its own clothes. Goombas have their own personalities, they have a bunch of different hats, and that's nothing to say about the partners that accompany Mario, because in this game you acquire these companions throughout the way. You can only use one in combat at a time, but they all have their own strengths and weaknesses and personalities and backgrounds. And the really cool thing is, like, you really get an attachment to all of Mario's companions as you are picking them up throughout the game. And it's just like every time you get a new companion, it's always so exciting, because like the traversal abilities, you're like, oh, this character can blow really strong wind and peel off paper to like reveal secret areas. And I actually saw a place like that underneath Rogueport, which is really cool. And then in combat, they also have their own like strengths and weaknesses. Like some are really good at taking down like guys with big defense. Others are really good at hitting like flying enemies. And so I think they just did a really good job giving each character their own spotlight in terms of exploration and in terms of combat. Now, combat is typical turn-based combat, but what I really like about this game is similar to like the other Mario RPGs. If you press A at the right time, then you'll be able to block an enemy attacking you and reduce the amount of damage that they're doing to you. And then when you're doing certain abilities to the enemy, certain attacks to the enemy, then you have to fulfill certain requirements. So if you're trying to swing a hammer, you gotta like tilt the analog stick left and then let go at a certain amount of time. If you're controlling like one of your companions, his move is like you have to rapidly tap the trigger button as fast as possible. And this is quite different than Paper Mario Sticker Star, because Sticker Star, you pretty much just have to press A at the right time. Like when your hammer gleams, then you press A. But in this game, like every single attack, both Mario's and your companions all have their own unique, almost like little mini game that you have to fulfill in order to maximize your damage. Throughout the game, you unlock these star powers. So there's this star meter that fills up, and you expend this meter in order to fulfill the star powers. And these are actually like in-depth mini games, like one to create like this earth tremor. You have to tap A at all the right times. There's this one in order to like buff up your character's defense and your attack. You have to like select all the blue and red up arrows, but don't select any of the poison mushrooms. And so as far like combat can tend to feel a little repetitive when you play turn-based games, but this system really mixes things up, especially if you like to try out all your different companions and you're constantly switching out between them in order to maximize their strengths. Mario also will acquire a vast amount of different abilities and attacks, and these are through the means of badges. And this is another thing that is lacking in Paper Mario Sticker Star. It was kind of a running theme as I was playing this game, like, man, why didn't Sticker Star have badges or companions? I mean, you had Kirsty, but she didn't help you fight. And these badges, basically what you do is when you level up, you can increase the amount of badge points that you have, and you can expend these badge points in order to equip badges. And badges are really cool. They have a lot of really cool effects. You can find some pretty strong ones. Obviously, the super strong ones that will like increase your attack damage or your defense are going to cost a lot of badge points, but these also unlock new abilities that you can equip via badges. In fact, I loved badges so much this playthrough that whenever I leveled up, you have the choice to either increase your HP, your FP, this is like your mana that you use to use your special abilities, or badge points. And almost entirely, every time I leveled up, I put it in the badge points. In fact, throughout the whole entire game, I never added any points to HP, so I always had only 10 HP. However, because I had such high defenses in place through the badge system, I hardly ever died, but I still did a ton of extra damage to the enemies. A lot of these badges basically say like when I'm under 5 HP, then I get like extra defense, and sometimes I get really lucky where enemies will miss me, and so I have all these in place, and if I had under 5 HP, then I'm doing a ton of extra damage, and the enemies can't really hit me. This whole idea, this whole system wasn't really a problem until the very end of the game when enemies started doing more than 10 damage per hit, even if I successfully defended against them. And at that point, I used my badge points to equip an HP badge, which gave me 15 hit points. Combat is also set up almost on a stage. Princess Peach Showtime, anyone? This stage, basically, it's kind of cool because when you initiate combat, this stage will like unfurl itself, like the backdrop and the lighting and the smoke effects, and then an audience will come and watch you battle. And this actually plays a certain role in terms of combat, because as you are fighting, you can make your moves flashy, like if you press A at the correct time, then your character will do like a little pose, and you'll gain star power. Basically, like the audience will start cheering for you, and you'll gain that star power to fill up that star meter to use those special abilities. Sometimes, it didn't happen very often, I kind of forgot about this, to be honest, for the most part of the game, but like sometimes the backdrop can fall either on you or enemies, or like the smoke effects will like blind you or confuse you. Like there's certain things like that. It all seemed fairly random, but it did seem like it happened to the enemies more than me, which I appreciate, because it's frustrating when like some random effect will happen even though, you know, you did not know it was coming. Other times the audience, this didn't happen very often, but like sometimes the audience will hold up an object that they're gonna throw at you, and sometimes it can be just like a rock that will do 1 damage to you, and other times it's items. So it'll kind of prompt you a little bit, like, hey, do you wanna kick this guy out of the audience who has an item up to throw at you? And you need to check if it's something beneficial or if it will be something detrimental to you. And then if it's like a guy with a rock or a hammer, you can like stomp on them to kick them out of the audience. And like as you level up, you'll gain more and more of an audience, so that means that your star power will fill up more and more frequently. There's no real lore or story reason why combat takes place on a stage. It's kind of more of just a mechanic, and then like after the combat's over, then it's really just down to you and your companion. It's not like you're constantly being watched, but it is an interesting system nevertheless. This game can also be pretty wordy. You're going to be doing a lot of reading because it's not like it's voice acted or anything, besides Mario doing the occasional woohoo, but it's just like text after text after text, and it sounds like a bad thing, but actually it's not, because the language and the words in this game are so animated and definitely entertaining. Paper Mario is not shy to being very funny and humorous. Sometimes it can get a little annoying. I almost relate it to like those Family Guy bits that go on just maybe a little too long to the point where it's not funny. Like there's one part where there's this newlywed couple on an island, and she like lost her ring, and they get in an argument, and he has to say I love you to her 100 times, and so that means you are pressing A 100 times to get to the next one. I love you, A. I love you, A. I love you, A. I love you, A. But at the same time, it's not like voice acted, but each character makes like their own little jarbled noise, kind of like Animal Crossing in a way. So the little noises that he was making get more and more like deep as he gets more and more tired. So it's like, it's funny that it made you do that. And there's a couple of scenes where they have you like sit through a ton of dialogue to the point where it's almost like too long and it's not funny anymore. But then it's even longer, and so it gets like even funnier. Like it's like that curve, that valley, till it's funny, not funny, and then funny again, just because of like how long it's taking. Like some characters will just go on and on and on, and even like Mario starts falling asleep. Sometimes they do this effect where there's like two people talking, so there's just one person rambling on and on in the background while like the two main characters are having a main conversation. And so like they do a lot of fun dialogue with the text. Like when characters are enunciating certain things, then their text will be kind of wavy, or when they're like exploding on someone, like the words will be all huge. It's kind of like Undertale in that way, with like the animated characteristic text. But yeah, you're going to be doing a lot of reading, which is either a good thing or a bad thing, depending on like how you look at it. But really though, just like such a unique, colorful cast of characters. Even the bosses themselves are like so well designed and often come back up in the future in like some way or another. And like there's characters like that married couple I was talking about earlier. They're a type of creature. They're a type of character called Piantas from Super Mario Sunshine. They don't make a lot of appearances nowadays for some reason or another, but basically like the Piantas in this game at Rogueport, they like have their own mafia, and she's like the daughter of the head mob boss. They all have like the stereotypical grandfather dialogue, and like they're just like reoccurring characters that you see like throughout your adventure. I like how sometimes this game even breaks the fourth wall where they're like talking to you. They'll say like, hey, you behind the screen, I know that you know who I am, but don't spill the beans, okay? And then the characters will look at each other and say like, who are they talking about? I don't see a screen. It's pretty funny actually. This game is like broken up by chapters, and basically like the beginning of the chapter is when you find out the star's destination, and the end of the chapter is when you get that star. And so at the end of each chapter, you have the opportunity to play as Princess Peach, because she is captive by the evil organization called the X-nauts. And then you have the opportunity to play as Bowser and Kamek. And Peach is kind of a vital role where she is building up this relationship with this computer called Tech, and she'll be sending like information to Mario. So it's not like you're doing any like fast-paced gameplay, but occasionally you'll play like little mini games where you have to like mix up a potion the right way. And then when you play as Bowser's story is pretty inconsequential, but it is humorous because like him and Kamek are like 2 steps behind the entire game. So like they'll explore areas that you explored a long time ago. Sometimes you'll get to play like a platforming level as Bowser, and he can like breathe fire, and instead of mushrooms he eats like racks of meat to get bigger. And so the dialogue between these two is pretty funny, and it's just funny seeing him like interact with these characters that I haven't seen in a little while, because it's been a while since I've been in that area. One of my bigger gripes is inventory is quite limited. You can only hold 15 different items, and those items can fill up fast. And so I actually use my items a lot more than just hoarding them like I normally did whenever I played the GameCube version of this game. And I know that there is a way that you can get 20 slots of inventory. Basically, like there's this 100 battle challenge where you have to do like 100 battles in a row, which is not something that I'm really up for. That's kind of like a big ask at this point. But they do like reward you every 10 or so battles. And I know there's a way to upgrade your storage, but still like 15 doesn't seem like a lot. Like you can store your items at a shop, but at the same time, if they're stored, then you can't use them when you're in combat and when you need them. There's also like side quests that sometimes you have to hold on to a lot of weapons. Basically, there's like a bulletin board where you can take on certain tasks for the friendly NPCs that are around the world, and you fulfill those tasks, and like some of them you have to take items and deliver them to certain places, and so that can take up your inventory space as well. These side quests never really seemed worth it to me. Most of the time they only gave me about 30 coins, which is really like nothing. By the end of the game, 2 battles would get me more than 30 coins, and by the end of the game I had plenty of coins to go around, so that was never an issue. And so it just kind of seemed like a waste of time to do those side quests. I don't know, maybe there's like a reward reward if you end up doing all of them. Maybe it's more inventory space. Speaking of those side quests, there is like really a lot of backtracking in this game, and that's another kind of like gameplay design choice that I'm not too much of a fan of, especially if, I mean, it's not too bad because like combat is still pretty entertaining and it's always satisfying leveling up and getting more badge points, but really it's like a lot of the game is walk to this area, defeat all the enemies on the way, okay, now walk back to where you were, okay, now walk back to that area you were just at, okay, now walk back to where you were, and it's just like eventually the scenery just starts becoming quite repetitive because you're just backtracking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And there is somewhat of a fast travel system. Basically, there are these like pipes that will take you to each of the main areas, but once you get to the main area, there's not like any fast travel system that way. So you're literally just like walking back. Now this game did, I mean, I'm not sure if this was in the GameCube version or not, but there is a badge called like First Strike or First Attack. I don't remember this being in the GameCube version, so I can't say if it's something that was introduced in this one or not. But basically, if you're like so over leveled than the enemy, then if you jump on them or if you hit them with a hammer, it won't go into combat. Basically, you just like automatically defeat them and you get 1 coin. This is pretty nice because when you are fighting against really underleveled enemies, they only give you 1 experience point anyway, like no matter how many enemies are on the screen. So it is pretty beneficial, especially when you're exploring an area and you're pretty over leveled. It's pretty nice that way. Another thing that I can't remember if it was in the GameCube version or not is the ability to like quickly switch between your companions using the left shoulder button. On the GameCube, I remember having to always pause, go into the companion menu, select the companion and switch out, which was fine like back in the day because I didn't really swap between my companions. Typically, I would just find like the one companion that I really liked and just stick with them the entire time. But this time around, I really was swapping between them because they all, I think I better understand all their different strengths and weaknesses, and I wanted to utilize them as much as possible. I especially kept switching to the little Yoshi companion that you have because you can ride it and it's almost like walking faster, so it makes navigating around the world a lot quicker as well. Really though, like this is such a cool game. It's so fun and it actually feels so fresh. Like despite being a game that came out on the GameCube, this feels like a brand new game. Really, Paper Mario needs to go back to this kind of style of game, and I would be a lot more excited whenever a new one came out if they went this route. It really does feel like I went on this whole adventure and I uncovered all these secrets and different unique environments and encountered all these unique funny characters and moments, whereas like I did not feel this way at all after completing Paper Mario Sticker Star. In fact, I think I spent maybe like an extra 10 hours playing Thousand Year Door, but still Sticker Star feels like it took me a lot longer. I'm going to give this game a 5 out of 5, and if you've never played this Paper Mario game before, I heartily recommend it. I'm so excited that it got a second chance on the Nintendo Switch because the GameCube version is quite difficult to acquire at this point. Well guys, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye.